How you guys doing? I'm up here in the Oregon mountains near the Dripping Springs recreation area. Wanted to make a primitive skills video. I was up in the Lincoln National Forest is shut, so I'm here making a very basics primitive skills video. It's going to cover the three, it's not just my opinion, it's well-known survival skills the world over. The three basics you need for survival: shelter, water, fire. For me, it's shelter, fire, and water. It's always been fire and water. And the reason being why it's that is most places where you find a water source, you're going to need to purify it. And if you're using primitive methods to do that, you're going to need a fire to be able to purify your water, even if you try and do a drip filter and whatnot. But that's not the primitive methods I'm going to be talking about. We'll be talking about very basic things to do your own research and practice. This is just the foundation, the base layer of these three things. And I have my shelter is just for demonstration purposes. Same with the fire. I'm in a wash. Obviously no water's running. You want to look for washes and riverbeds for where you would look for a water source. And then fire, I just have a basic bow drill that I'm going to use to go over the setup. Not necessarily I'm not going to be making a fire. Fire hazards been going on here. It's how dry it is. But I'm just going to be making a demonstration bow drill just so you guys can see the pieces and potentially try and utilize that yourself. Make your own and practice. So, and the skills are for you're out there. You have this, all your kit, your rifle, your kit. I got IFAK, I got water, but all of a sudden, all you're left with is this, and then all of a sudden, this is all you're left with, just your knife, and you have no means of communication, no modern fire starting, no flint, no lighter, no nothing, no firearm, no water, no canteen cup to purify water, no water purification tablets, nothing. Just have your knife and your wits and your skills. What are you going to do? So that's what this video is just going to go over, the three basics if you're in a situation where you have nothing to start. It's giving you a place to start from. What do I think of? Shelter, fire, water. And then you go from there. At that point, you're in a survival situation, not a thriving situation. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a survival situation where you may not have your kit, your gear, any modern amenities. Going back to primitive skills. So, first bit, shelter. Let's go. So, first bit, shelter. The easiest primitive shelter there is to build is a debris hut. You don't need any cordage, you don't need any paracord, you don't need a tarp or anything. All you need are sticks, a place to your I don't want to say guide pole, your main spine, your main pole. You need a place to lean that up against. And you just need to gather sticks to create a rib cage, a tent frame, basically. But you're not using any cordage, you're not using any paracord to tie it down. You're literally just laying them and crossing them over each other. Work smarter, not harder. You want to expend the least amount of energy possible to create your shelter, right? You want to be able to make it in a timely manner, but also not exhaust yourself while you're making it. This is literally it. Your guide pole, your main pole, and then you just crisscross, rib cage, other sticks opposite each other. That's it. Then, depending on where you are, is dependent on what you have to cover it. It's a debris hut because you're not You don't have an axe. You don't have those type of tools. You literally just have just a knife, maybe nothing. And debris, as in forest floor, leaf litter debris, is what you're using to build this shelter. It's not a lean-to. It's not even like, obviously we don't have a tarp, so we're not building a basic tarp shelter. I'll touch on those two real quick. But this is, you're building this with what you have. The leaf litter around you, and the sticks that you can either pull off of a tree or that are on the ground. That's it. Now, lean-tos, you can make it, you can build a lean-to the same way you would build a debris hut, with things that have already been fallen off of a tree, dead, whatnot. It's not as efficient or ergonomic, efficient, ergonomic for protection and warmth. Because even though we're here in the high desert in New Mexico, it still gets chilly at night. You can hear, you see a little bit of a breeze. And if you're just in like a t-shirt or, okay, fine, just a basic cotton type uniform, nylon cotton uniform, whatever, you need something to protect you against the elements. So a lean-to doesn't do that. And obviously we don't have a tarp shelter. But if you have a tarp or a poncho, the quickest, that's one of the, if you have that, the quickest shelter to make. Tie a piece of paracord about 6 to 2 trees, 2 bushes, 2 big boulders, 6 or 7 feet apart. Tie it about 18 to 24 inches off the ground. Put your poncho over. Now you can take your paracord and tie and stake off with sticks the 4 corners, kind of like a tent, or even less if you don't have a knife, but you have the paracord and the poncho, you can just weigh the corners down with a rock. The reason you want it that low to the ground, heat rises, and also the lower you are to the ground, the less likely, you know, your tent isn't 6 feet high, the wind hitting it, it's less than 2 feet, not getting as much elemental influence, wind, rain. The lower to the ground, the less heat rises and the less you're exposed to the elements. Okay, so that's the lean-to and the tarp shelter. But the lean-to, you can make it the same way, guide pull between 2 trees and then have all your sticks sloping down the back. But then you have this big open front that, unless you know exactly where the wind's going to be blowing all the time, wind could be blowing directly into your shelter. That's not fun. So I don't recommend that. I recommend just a simple debris hut. What you do with a debris hut is, say you have a blouse and a skivvy shirt, or maybe a t-shirt and like a vest or a rain jacket or something like that. You just take that jacket off and you walk around and you fill it with debris, leaves. You don't really want sticks, leaves. And literally all you do, fill that up. And you just, now obviously this is for demonstration purposes. I would want more sticks laced in between each other so that they can hold it. But that's this area that I'm in. It's also environmental, the area you're in. The amount of these little, I don't even know what this tree is. It's not mesquite. It's like a bush type tree. But I don't know what it is. It's one of the few ones around here, I don't know. But the leaves are so tiny that you would need basically a lattice work to be able to hold them. And what you would want to do with leaves like this, layer of lattice work, layer of leaves. Lattice work, layer of leaves. Now for most guys, let's say up in the Pacific Northwest or the East Coast, debris huts are a hell of a lot easier to build because you have maple, oak, you have all those different types of large leaves and leaf litter on the ground, and it's a lot easier to collect it and pile it up. The rule of thumb is 2 feet thick of leaf litter will protect you from any type of rain, high rain, high winds, rain. You just keep layering it thick. Because I remember some of the ones that I built doing my primitive courses, we did 2-3 feet thick of leaves and pour it. And the way we passed the debris hut test was then you pour a bucket of water on it. And if no water comes through, then you layered it enough. Took a couple tries, you know, dump, okay, we need more. But then finally, when you get to that 2-3 foot, and it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a big, it looks just like a dead leaf bush. But when you get just the right amount, about 2-3 feet, nothing's coming through. And there's so much leaf litter. Now high winds, you know, if we're talking 50-60 mile an hour winds, that's a different thing. But generally speaking, 2 to 3 feet with just a windy, rainy day, that's what you're looking for. So there you go. That's it. Utilize the dead trees, dead branches, dead wood around you, all the leaf litter on the ground. Now, if you don't have a lot of leaf litter, you can use moss and pine boughs, which is just boughs. It's just another word for pine branches. Pine and spruce, break them off, layer them kind of like shingles. The way you see it like on the Survivor shows where they're using banana leaves as shingles. Same thing applies with pine boughs and spruce boughs. You just need more. So that's it. Dead branches that are on the ground, you collect up, guide pole, crisscross, make it a tent frame or rib cage, and then you just start piling and you pile. Take your time. That's the whole point. We don't want to expend our energy quickly. You know what I mean? So there we go. That's just the basics of a debris hut. So there's shelter. Let's move on to fire. All right, so fire. So right here are the pieces to make a bow drill. All right, so you have your baseboard, your spindle, your handle, which will go on top of the spindle, and your bow. Now, most people have shoelaces. So if you don't have paracord, you can use a shoelace to do this. But it's basically, you make a basic childhood looking type bow. You want a little bit of slack in it when you make it so that you can put the spindle in it, all right? So the trick is, the wood that you use for the bow doesn't necessarily matter. You potentially want some green wood so it has some flex to it so that it doesn't just break when you put tension on it. Your handle has to be a harder wood than the spindle, and some people you can use stone if a stone has a divot in it that might fit your spindle. The issue with that is stone wears down the spindle very quickly when you start going, because obviously soft wood, hard rock, it starts to wear down your spindle. So you want your handle to be a harder wood than your spindle. Generally, the best woods to use for your baseboard and your spindle, you want to use soft woods like cedar or juniper. The best wood to use, this is cedar. I've had this for a very long time. I haven't actually used this in a while. But the best woods to use are soft woods like juniper or cedar. The issue with using something like pine or maybe spruce is that they're too wet, meaning they have too much sap in them. And when you start heating it up, it doesn't dust the way cedar does. Cedar will dust, and that's what we're looking for. When these rub together, they create microscopic pieces of dust that slowly gather, and the friction turns that dust into a tiny little coal, right? So when you're using something like pine or spruce for your spindle or your baseboard, baseboard. Did I say baseboard? Yeah, whatever. Your baseboard. When you use those, that sap the heat will make the sap come out of the wood and will make it sticky, and it won't work. It won't create the dust you need. So here, let me get the right position. So basically, you get a piece of wood. It can be a felled, because dried cedar is great. Felled, right? A felled piece of wood, and basically just put your foot, that's why we have them like this. You put your foot on the baseboard, okay? You take your bow, you take the spindle, you twist it in the bowstring like this. You put it into the baseboard. to the hole, take your handle, hold your handle, and you just, now you use a shoelace. You gotta be careful, because if you go too fast, you melt the plastic in your shoelace. It's a specific amount of tension. Like I said, I'm just demonstrating. I'm not building a fire out here with this. But you just, do you understand the concept? You basically have the spindle in the baseboard, hole in the handle, holding the spindle, and you need to go back and forth like that. And then that's the number one thing that happens when you're trying to make a fire with this, is the spindle will go flying. And then see how loose this has become? Then you just tighten it, right? And you go at it again. You twist it. I'm not gonna put my foot on it, but that's, so here, hold on. Bow, string, handle, baseboard, spindle. Spindle in the bow, twist it like this, okay? Hold it, put it in the baseboard. Handle, need to make a bigger hole, but a hole for the top of the spindle. Right, boop, put that, and then you don't want to push down too hard with your handle, because then the bow won't move, and you just want the right amount of pressure. You just go back and forth, and the trick is to try and go back and forth along the whole length of the bow. The more leverage you get, and the more friction you get, the easier it is to start the fire. Now you can also do a method, the plow method. So you see how on this wood, it's like that, it has a little groove like that. You find a dry piece of cedar or juniper, and you have a longer spindle, something longer than this, but the same type of soft wood. And you basically put a foot on it, and you go and that, it works as well. You see it's creating this dust already. That works as well. It's a little more time consuming. It's a little more energy consuming, but that works. Now a hand drill, a lot of indigenous people utilize hand drills, and it works. I've only ever tried it a couple times. Never got a fire with a hand drill, but it is a very good method. It's basically a baseboard like this with a very long spindle, and you basically take your hands like this and you go down the piece of wood. You come back up and you go down, because you can't go up because it'll take the wood away from the baseboard, and you just go down. But we're not going over that. We're just going over the bow drill method. So, consists of 4 pieces: handle, spindle, baseboard, bow. The spindle and the baseboard need to be a softer wood, like juniper or cedar. The handle has to be a harder wood than your spindle, because it needs to not create the same type of friction that you're creating on the baseboard. You can use a rock, but it will wear your spindle down because it's harder than the soft wood. The wood of your bow doesn't necessarily matter. You want it to have a good natural bow to it. You don't want it to be rotten where it might break, and then you have to remake a bow. You have to go find, another shape and retie it. All you do, inside of the bow, pull out and push down like that, and you twist the bow around the spindle. Spindle then goes into the baseboard. You put the handle that has a little hole drilled in it for the top of the spindle on top, and then you just go back and forth. And that's it. Look it up. Look up the type of wood in your area. See if you can make one. You practice it in your frickin' garage, practice it in your backyard. I'm man enough to admit I've only ever gotten a handful of fires started this way, but I know how to do it. That's the thing. It's in my toolbox. I know how to do it if I don't have a ferro rod or anything like that. So there you go. There's fire. All right, so the last bit is water. Now, one of the main reasons why I say fire comes before water is because you have to purify your water. Now if you don't have a canteen cup or like a simple metal pot, an old aluminum, old can, even a plastic water bottle works. You fill a plastic water bottle up to the top, it will shrink over a fire, but it will be able to boil water. It holds, it doesn't melt. Don't ask me the science behind it. I just know it works. You don't really want to be drinking boiled plastic bottle water. But here I'm in a wash. So what I would want to do is you look for natural runs in an area. So here's a wash. So I don't want to use my knife. I don't want to dull my knife to dig around. So just pieces of stick, and look at that. Look how dark the ground is already, right? So the ground is that dark right here. So then you could, a longer stick, doesn't necessarily matter. You want to dig down approximately 12, depending on where you are, 12 to 24 inches into the ground. And basically, what you want to do is you want to get rid of the top layer of dirt and rock and whatnot. See, we also don't want to use a lot of our energy because we don't want to get all hot and sweaty trying to find water, right? So you just dig out the top rock, top dirt. See how it gets hard down here? So the technique is you dig 12 to 24 inches down and you let it sit. Now this may not work the first time you do it, the first spot you do it. But what we want to do is dig down far enough, deep enough, where the water slowly seeps into that hole, because the hole is obviously, it's what is it? It's relieving the pressure from the ground. If I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. Sounds right. Don't quote me on that. But the water comes into the hole. Now, say you don't have a canteen cup or something to boil your water in. You want to get a log. This is why fire first is important. You want to get a log. Have a log. Piece of wood. Take coals and you burn a bowl into that piece of wood. You make a fire. Coals about this big. You use, 2 pieces of wood as a pair of tongs. Put them into the piece of wood to burn, and burn a bowl into this piece of wood. You then use rocks and sand to scrape out all the charred wood. Then you take your water holes that you made, that you're trying to collect water in. You take that bowl that you made and you fill it full of the water. It's not purified yet, even though it came out of the ground. So what do you want to do? What do you do? You take that bowl by your fire. You find rocks, clean rocks. You can even clean the rocks in one of your water holes. Then you put the rocks into your fire, get them hot, very hot. And you put them in there for 20 plus minutes. Then you use that same type of tong method to take the rocks out of the fire. And what we're doing is it's called flash boiling. You drop these red hot rocks into that little bowl you make, and it flash boils the water. Some of the water will evaporate, but it's better than drinking the water straight from the hole. So that's it. You want to look for natural runs, riverbeds, and even marshy areas or areas where like ferns. I know in the east ferns grow everywhere, but like big clumps of ferns and trees like cedar back east generally grow in wetter areas, which is hilarious because here west, cedar and juniper are the hardiest trees. Back east, generally like a cedar grove will be in a marshy area. So there you go. So that's it. Shelter, fire, water. Those are the 3 that you need. So there we go. All right. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun making it. I'm glad I got some of that information out of my head, put it out in a video. Like I said, foundation, bottom layer, just barely what you need, you know? And yeah, look them up. Bow drill, you know, water purification / how to find water in whatever environment you're in. And then shelters. Shelter's really easy to practice. Just go into the woods. It's like when we were kids and we would make stick forts. Basically what it is. Debris hut is just a survival stick fort. There you go. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know. Give me a comment. Give me some of your primitive tips in the comments. Love to swap back and forth. But like I said, this is just basics. This isn't anything. You know, dudes with their gear and their fieldcraft and all of that is all good and dandy. But if you don't have any of it, what do you do? So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Practice. Get out there. Utilize your skills. Make yourself better. You know, and it's all we can do is try and make ourselves better. So, all right. Y'all have a good one.